The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description.
Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. I, of course, am your Commander-in-Chief, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Lots to get to tonight. Had to take a bit of a detour. I told you guys earlier that we were going to do the defensive free agency preview for the Commanders. We'll put that on pause until tomorrow because we have quite a few items to get to tonight, in addition to a number of topics that we can talk about tomorrow, including those free agents. So it's going to be, like I told you earlier, a busy week. You're going to see me quite a bit. But in typical Louie T fashion, what would be a video during the day that I do without the Commanders then doing something immediately thereafter? The running joke is death, taxes, and the Commanders executing some type of maneuver right after one of my videos. So, of course, I get off the stream, and not even 5 minutes later, Brian Johnson is out and Andrew Wylie is back. We'll talk about all of those things in a bit. But I got to start off the show with some somber news. And I was going to do this earlier today. It slipped my mind briefly, so I wanted to do this right now. Couple of deaths in the NFL family. One hits a bit closer to home than the other, but this one is really sad. I mean, not that any death isn't sad, but this one, Rondale Moore, 25 years old, and reportedly it's a suicide. Prayers up to his family and the loved ones that were affected by this tragedy. He had a very rocky NFL career, one that was marred by injuries. He just suffered another injury, a torn ACL that ended his season this year. And mentally, he just wasn't in a good space, obviously. And, this is what happens sometimes when this is all he probably knew. And again, I can't speak for him, not in his situation, but, I'm a mental guy, the psychology of everything. I always want to know why. I'm a big why guy. And, sometimes you put so much into something and it's all you have. This is all he wanted to do. And he probably felt like it was being taken from him and nothing was going right. And he, this is a former second-round pick that just hasn't ever gotten his footing in the NFL. And I don't know what pushed him to the point that he felt like there was no other recourse than to take his own life. But it's just a sad matter all the way around. And I remember having this conversation with you guys probably maybe a year or two ago about mental health being a real thing. And AJ Brown spoke out about it again today, because AJ Brown, if you guys don't know, is a mental health advocate. He's struggled with mental health in the past. And, sometimes people make jokes of that when, he's doing some of the things he does with the media, with the Philadelphia Eagles. But mental health is no laughing matter. I used to be one of those people ignorant to mental health before I met my wife. She was the one that opened my eyes to mental health being a real thing. And it's no joke, man. And this is another example of mental health being something that we have to take serious. Check on your friends, including the strong ones, because they're the ones sometimes that doesn't have anyone to lean on, no one to talk to. They're the one that everyone else is coming to, dumping all their problems on. I always tell my friend, one of my best friends, he's one of those people that always is filling up everyone else's cup. Well, who's filling up your cup? And so I always make it my business to check on him, to make sure he's good, because he's always pouring into others. Well, who's pouring into you? And so just want to take this opportunity. And when people, lose their lives in this fashion, I never want it to go in vain. It's always an opportunity to bring light to a situation just make sure that you're taking care of yourself mentally first, but make sure you're checking on those that you love often and making sure that you're helping to fill up their cup as well. May Rondale Moore rest in peace. Really tragic situation with him taking his own life. And then that was the Minnesota Vikings, posted that on Saturday. And then the very next day, this one hits way too close to home. If you are a 757er like myself, that you grew up in a certain era, then Rondale Whitaker was it, man. Another death in the Whitaker family way too soon. For those of you that aren't aware, his uncle is the Hall of Fame boxer Pernell Sweet Whitaker, who is a legend around our parts, still is even in death. Ronyell Whitaker was his nephew. And for those of you who grew up in a certain area in the 757, Ronyell Whitaker was it in the late 90s. High school phenomenon. Like, I'm talking about Lake Taylor Titan legend. This dude was Mr. Everything, running back, returner, wide receiver, defensive back, you name it, he did it. He touched the football, he scored touchdowns. He was it growing up. Like, we thought he was the next big thing to come out of the 757 when he was in high school. He could do no wrong. It was him. It was Ronald Curry. We had so many dudes that were coming up in the game, but he was right up the street. He was in Norfolk, right? So it hit different. He was a part of those guys that went to Virginia Tech that turned that program into like the factory that it became of all of the homegrown talent that was here. They would just go to Blacksburg, right? Him and Vic went to Virginia Tech. Then, of course, Marcus went, and you started to see a lot of the homegrown products stay close to home instead of venturing out and going elsewhere. They would just go to Virginia Tech. And he was a part of that undefeated team with Vic in 99 that won 14 games, went 14-0. So, Ronyell Whitaker was the man growing up. And it's sad to see that he passed away. We don't know exactly how or why, but he was only 46 years young, man. Like this one stings, man. I'm just at a loss with this one. Like, wow, Ronyell Whitaker, man, rest in peace, bro. Yikes. So, earlier today, I was talking about, we transitioned into some, conversations about ball, and I was talking about needing to re-sign Laremy Tunsil earlier and how good he was and how I felt like he was an all-pro tackle last year. And I think they understand his value. We've heard Adam Peters speak. We'll talk about that here in a second. But he talked about, Peters did, the trade bringing Laremy Tunsil here and how he'd do it again because Tunsil was so good. And he is a priority this offseason. He needs to be the first priority this offseason when we get to free agency. But these are some numbers to back up the claims that I made that Laremy Tunsil was one of the best this season at the left tackle position, especially in the NFC. He should have been an all-pro. But Garrett Bowles, who a lot of people think was, robbed, was the number one tackle in the league in terms of pressure rate. Only gave up pressure on 2.66% of his snaps. Andrew Thomas, 2.90 pressure rate, was second in the league. Now, mind you, Andrew Thomas missed a bunch of time. So his 2.9, while impressive, isn't as impressive as Laremy Tunsil's 3.06 with the amount of snaps Tunsil played in comparison to that of Andrew Thomas. That said, Tunsil came in third in the league for left tackles in pressure rate in terms of the lowest pressure rate at 3.06. All right. In comparison, Tristan Wirfs, 4.85. And again, that's with less snaps played on the season than that of Laramie Tunsil, or a comparable amount. I can't say it was less because we had some games where the offense was, it felt like the offense was barely on the field. So I can't say with less snaps, but Wirfs missed more games than Tunsil did this season. And he was one of the guys that finished ahead of him in the all-pro side of things in the NFC. But I just wanted to show you this because the Seahawks played in the Super Bowl. Their left tackle, Charles Cross, 5.33% pressure rate. And his counterpart in that game for the Patriots, Will Campbell, who was molested in that game, he gave up 5.46% at the 11th worst in the league. So, again, you don't have to have this, all-world left tackle, right tackle, etc., to win the Super Bowl. But it's better to have it than to not have it, right? You much rather have a top 5 tackle in terms of protecting the quarterback. And we have one. We have one, which is why you got to get them signed up and put this thing behind us and make sure that this is not a distraction the way the Terry situation was last year. And then in comparison, I can't bring up the good without some of the bad. You go to the right side, and these are right tackle pressure rates in 2025. And yeah, this was pretty rough. So you go down this list and you see that Morgan Moses, old man Momo, 11th for New England at 4.66. Seattle's right tackle way down the list. At 23rd is Lucas at 5.69. But you have to go down even further to find our rookie right tackle, Josh Connolly Jr., who gave up a whopping 6.89% on pressures, or a pressure rate this season, which was pretty bad, right? It's almost the worst this season was Cleveland's tackle at 7.99%. Josh Connolly Jr. wasn't that far off. But also keep in mind that I would imagine, and I can't confirm nor deny this, but I would imagine that the bulk of these pressures that he gave up that, had this pressure rate skyrocket came at the beginning of the season. Now, that's not to say that he didn't give up more pressures as the season went along, but the number was out. It was insane at the beginning. It was outrageous at the beginning of the season. Anyway, he went through that gauntlet to start the season off. He struggled mightily. And I would imagine that had his pressure rate through the roof. And then as he continued to kind of stabilize his situation, get more and more comfortable, I would imagine that his pressure rates, started to decrease, but it was coming from such a deficit that it still ended up pretty rough. I expect massive improvement from Josh Connolly Jr. from 26th worst pressure rate in the league to somewhere in the top 15 next season. We're talking bottom 7 in the league right now. I expect top 15 from him next year in terms of improvement. We're looking for that. If he's really what we think he is, the jump usually happens from year 1 to year 2. So we'll see what that looks like. Continuing on with some more news. Earlier today, we talked about a guy that isn't going to make it to free agency in tight end Kyle Pitts. No surprise there. This one isn't official, but it feels like it's going to happen. So Evan Sittery posted this, which, again, I caution everyone out there this time of the year please be very mindful of who you are gathering information from. All right. Blue checks don't mean a damn thing anymore. They used to mean something, they mean nothing. You can pay for a blue check. Okay. Just because a guy has on a tie and a suit in his thumbnail with a blue check, which he doesn't even have, doesn't mean you take his word and you run with it. All right. A simple few clicks will tell you all you need to know about whether or not the content that you are consuming is legitimate or not. But generally, this time of the year, an Evan Sittery doesn't move the needle for me. Okay. The only reason I'm even showing you this is because he put at Tom Pelissaro here, which is where I went back to double check and verify that what he was saying here was actually legitimate. And as a matter of fact, Tom Pelissaro, who is in Indianapolis right now, was doing a bevy of hits for NFL Network, and he was posting them on his X. And one of those hits, he talked about Max Crosby and his representation being in Indy, and those conversations about whether or not the Raiders are going to trade him are going to start to take place. They're going to see if they can get on the same page. If not, there are going to be 31 other teams that are going to be very interested in how that Max Crosby situation is going. And after that, he went to Daniel Jones, and he talked about Daniel Jones potentially being back and how the Colts want to work out a long-term deal with Daniel Jones. And why that is important is because if they can work out the long-term deal with Daniel Jones, it then frees up the franchise tag for which they can use on Alec Pierce as they try to figure out what the next move is with him. We've already talked about the fact that more likely than not, they're going to cut ties with Michael Pittman Jr., which will free up some cap space. I assume they're going to try to use that cap space for a guy like Daniel Jones and or Alec Pierce. But it feels like no matter what happens, Alec Pierce is going to be back in Indianapolis. And Evan Sittery writes, the Colts have no intentions of letting Alec Pierce hit free agency per Tom Pelissaro. Now, Tom Pelissaro did not necessarily word it that way, but he did make it abundantly clear that the Colts do want Alec Pierce back, and they want to make sure that they solidify whatever his situation is going to be by the time they get to that deadline, which is March 3rd, for the franchise or transitional tag. They would love to get a long-term deal done with Daniel Jones. That would free up the franchise tag slash transition tag for Alec Pierce. If they can't get something done with Daniel Jones, then the tag is probably going to be applied to him, and then that will probably set in a chain of events that will probably lead to Michael Pittman, Jr. being, released, and then Alec Pierce probably being signed. We'll see how all of this works out. It's the second time, though, that Daniel Jones has been in a very similar spot, and he's been able to capitalize both times. Let me finish reading this tweet, and then I'll explain. If necessary, Indianapolis will franchise tag Pierce if they can't reach a new deal. Pierce was projected to be one of the best available free agent wide receivers. So that's all of the stuff that we've talked about with Alec Pierce. He's going to be one of the best receivers available. I think the top receiver available, which is why I would love to have seen him make it to the market, because what that's going to do, it's the same thing that Kyle Pitts getting slapped with the franchise tag has effectively done to the tight end position. Now everyone's turning their attention to Isaiah Likely. It makes it less likely that he ends up here in Washington. Same could be said for a guy like Juwan Jennings. If you think he's the second best receiver, or Romeo Doubs, now all of a sudden people start turning their attention to other receivers who are, the next, guy down or two, and they become more important. Again, Tennessee doesn't really care who gets the money. They got money to spend. They need receiver help. Of course they care who the guy is, but they're going to spend this money. So Alec Pierce potentially being off the board in terms of free agency does make it a little bit more complicated if you're out here trying to go after one of these top wide receivers in free agency. Just like Pitts being off the board at the tight end position makes it a little bit more challenging if you're going after one of the top tight end targets in free agency. Daniel Jones, when he was in New York after they made the playoffs in 2022, was in a similar spot. The Giants wanted to work out a long-term deal with him, so that they could free up the franchise tag so that they could franchise tag Saquon Barkley. If they couldn't get the deal done with Jones, they would have to use the franchise tag on him, and that would have allowed Saquon Barkley to leave in 2023. As it happened, Daniel Jones got a fat-ass contract from the Giants, making roughly $40 million a year. That allowed them to franchise tag Saquon Barkley for the 2023 season, and then that turned out to be a really bad deal for the Giants. Here we are again. Daniel Jones, similar spot. They want to franchise tag somebody else. They don't want to have to franchise tag him. So it's going to force them to have to get something done before March 3rd. So the clock is ticking. They can get that deal done with Daniel Jones. They're going to be able to then use the franchise tag on Alec Pierce. So that's a situation worth monitoring. Let's get to the next order of business. And speaking of Indianapolis, Adam Peters, this is per JP Finley. He says, Adam Peters set to speak at noon on Tuesday. So he was catching a flight going out to Indy. And the most important part here is the first part. Adam Peters is going to address the media at the Combine tomorrow. As we see every year, general managers speak, head coaches speak. So I would assume the general managers are speaking tomorrow and the head coaches will then follow on Wednesday. And then you get the on-field action on Thursday. So like I said, it's going to be a very busy week. Tons of content coming out of the channel. You're probably going to see me multiple times a day with the way things are going. Tomorrow, I will be on very shortly after Adam Peters' press conference to break down what was said. And then that night, we will do the defensive free agency preview for the Commanders. Wednesday, I'm assuming Dan Quinn will speak. I'll have something there. And then hopefully Wednesday, we will have the Commanders Kings go live. That way we can, preview the Combine, talk about guys that we want to see at the Combine, et cetera, et cetera. And then we can also discuss what Adam Peters said and Dan Quinn at the podium. So a ton to get to there. But let's talk about the main reason why we're on here talking about a bunch of news and notes instead of the defensive preview for free agency. So we've talked quite a bit about the coaching situation for the Commanders. A lot of the conversation has been based off of the movement surrounding the coaching space for the Commanders. A lot of it on the defensive side. Offensively, they did a lot of their work early. They promoted David Blau. They reshuffled the quarterback coach room. And that was basically it on the offensive side, right? Everything else is pretty much intact. They also swapped out offensive line coaches. Darnell Stapleton got a promotion out with Bobby Johnson. So that was the offensive side of the football, and it's been pretty steady since. It really haven't had a lot of movement there. Defensively, we've been all over the place, right? We've seen hires. We've seen guys moved on from. We've seen promotions from within. We've seen demotions from within. We've seen a lot of different movement, from William Gay being promoted to, defensive backs coach / cornerback coach, a demotion for Daryl Tapp from D-line coach to assistant D-line coach. We've got guys out of here, right? We've got guys coming in. No more Ryan Kerrigan. John Pagano now has a different title now. He's the outside linebackers coach. So we've talked about all of these, movement. Eric Henderson coming in to be your D-line coach, also serve as the defensive run game coordinator, et cetera, et cetera. So a ton of movement on that side of the football. We thought we were getting another coach in here, and Jake Olson. He actually went back to LSU. But here's some more coaching news. The Commanders are losing a coach here in Brian Johnson. This from Adam Schefter earlier today. So the Rams posted their 2026 coaching staff after they promoted the offensive coordinator. He was their like quarterbacks coach last year, Nate Steelhouse, who was a hot name this offseason. He interviewed for the Cardinals head coaching job, the Browns head coaching job, ultimately decided to stay in LA. And after they made it official with him as their offensive coordinator, they released their coaching staff for 2026. And if you look all the way at the bottom, right above special teams staff, you'll see the name Brian Johnson. And so he's going to be a senior defensive assistant in LA with the Rams. So it's one of those situations I feel like. So let me read the tweet from Schefter. He says, one other notable LA hiring, former Commanders assistant head coach and past game coordinator Brian Johnson has now joined the Rams staff as a senior offensive assistant. It's not what it says here. He's listed under the defensive staff, but whatever. I could care less what his role is in LA. The bottom line is he's no longer here. So it leaves one void in particular, because who even knows what the hell an assistant head coach even does? I think that's just a title. I don't think that actually means anything, but the offensive pass game coordinator is a pretty significant title and something that I think they're going to have to replace some way, shape, or form, whether that's someone already in-house, picking up a bigger role, right, and adding that to their plate, or bringing someone from the outside in to fill that void. We'll see how they decide to attack that. But one note here with Brian Johnson, I talk about this all the time. I'm a big Y guy. It feels like this was one of those I feel slighted, I can't stay here type of decisions, right? This was a bit emotional. We saw the same thing happen in Cleveland with their defensive coordinator. Shucks, I can see his face. Why can't I think of his name? Oh my gosh, it'll come to me, or one of you guys will tell me. But he thought he was going to get the head coaching job in Cleveland. He interviewed for it. He thought he was going to get it. He didn't get it. And once he didn't get it, they wanted him to stay on as the defensive coordinator. He turned in his letter of resignation. I can't stay here after I didn't get the job, right? It felt like one of those type of situations with Brian Johnson. He was Jim Schwartz. Thank you, Malcolm. Jim Schwartz, thought he was going to get the job in Cleveland, didn't get it. And he's like, I can't stay here and be the defensive coordinator. Not after I didn't get the job. So Brian Johnson interviewed for the offensive coordinator position here, and he probably thought he was going to get it. He thought he was next in line, right? And look, if we're being honest, there were two candidates in-house for offensive coordinator. It was him and the guy they ultimately gave the job to, David Blau. Those are the two guys that in the offseason, when they did their little scrimmage, their burgundy and gold scrimmage, those were the two play callers, right? So we knew it was one of those two guys that if they were going to go in-house, it was going to be one of those two guys. Well, they ultimately went with the guy that I'm glad they went with. I'm not the biggest Brian Johnson fan, right? Again, we can't actually know who was at fault the year he was the offensive play caller in Philadelphia. It's hard to really say. I just know their offense was horrible. It was poorly called. It was a shit show. And he was at the helm of that as the play caller. Again, I don't know who was to blame. He could have had, input from the head coach, and that's why the offense went to hell in a handbasket, but his fingerprints were on it. I know that much. And I was like, if that was his doing, I want nothing to do with Brian Johnson as the offensive play caller here. But he didn't get the job, and I think he just decided, I can't stay here. That's what it feels like. Because it's not like he got that's not a promotion that he got with the Rams. Like, Cliff Kingsbury is their assistant head coach. Again, whatever the hell that means, right? But I do know when you look at this list here, right, under Sean McVay, it's Cliff Kingsbury as assistant head coach. So that's a pretty important thing when underneath the head coach, the first name that you see is Cliff Kingsbury's, right? So that's a pretty important title, at least in their pecking order. Brian Johnson's all the way down here as a senior. Like, this is some shit a title you make up to just give a guy a job. Senior defensive coach. What the hell does that even mean, right? But ultimately, I just don't think he wanted to be here after not getting a job. He probably felt like he got passed over, and so he wanted out. That's cool. I get it. I understand, and wish him nothing but the best. I got no ill will towards him. Hope it works out for him in LA. But David Blau was the move here. Like, I'm excited about David Blau, and if I don't want anybody here that's a malcontent, upset, jealous, any of that in that building. If you're upset that you didn't get the opportunity, so be it. Move on, start anew, and that's what he's doing. So now there is a new void for Washington to fill. I don't know if they fill the assistant head coach title. I don't think that's mandatory, but I do think you have to get you a offensive pass game coordinator. Just like I think they need a defensive pass game coordinator. I expect them to fill both of those voids at some point this offseason, whether it's, again, in-house with a promotion or they end up going and getting someone from the outside and to bring them into the organization. And then this piece of news hit earlier as well from our guy, Ari, who reported this like right after I got off the stream earlier. Source: the Commanders and right tackle Andrew Wylie have agreed to a 2-year, $7.5 million contract with upside to get it to $10.5 million, keeping him off the free agent market. Wylie has started 34 games in 3 seasons with Washington and wanted to stay with the organization. A win-win deal for both sides. I love this move. And I told you guys this. We talked about Wylie twice over the last 3 or 4 videos. The offensive free agency video that we did, the offensive guide to free agency, I went over the different positions that were on the offensive side of the football. And I didn't do a lot for the offensive line because I said it's one of the position groups that is pretty strong here in Washington, and there's not a ton of movement that is necessary. And I said, Andrew Wylie is a free agent, and I wouldn't mind bringing him back. Then you go back even further, a couple more videos to the Commanders free agent video that we did, where we talked about all of the Commanders pending free agents that were coming up. And I listed all of the guys that I was interested in the team keeping on board. And I think I ultimately had 10 guys that I was cool with the team bringing back. And I think it was 7 of the 10 that I said I would be good. I really want back. And there were 10 guys total that I was like, yo, either way, I'm good. I would prefer them to be back. But if they're not, I'm okay with it. But there were 7 guys in particular that I really wanted back. Wylie was one of the 3 that I said I would love to have back, but I'm not tripping if they're not back. And I just feel like he's our new Swiss Army knife on the offensive line. And when he comes in, he plays really well. He fits in the locker room. He's a guy that can play 4 out of the 5 offensive line positions. Really, for me, 3, okay, because none of us want to see him at left tackle, right? But I feel confident if he has to go in at right tackle that he can hold it down. I feel good about him going to both guard spots, which he played right guard for us when Cosme was out last year. And we know if he has to, he can go over and play left guard as well. So he can basically play, 4 out of the 5 offensive line positions technically, but he's really more of a guy that you feel good about at 3 of the 5 offensive line positions. I think it's a really good move to bring him back. I think he's still got some good football left in him, and he's the perfect backup, offensive lineman. And I think he's a much better run blocker than he is a pass protector. Like, he gets after it in the run game. And with this scheme, Andrew Wylie can actually move. Like in 2024, when he was our starting right tackle, a lot of our big plays on the ground with Jaden as a runner, things of that nature, you go watch Andrew Wylie get out in front of those. I think about the Arizona game where Jaden gets in on the quarterback draw, basically, or the quarterback sweep, really. It's Andrew Wylie that's kind of leading him into the end zone when Jaden starts dancing. He gets in the end zone and right? Wylie is a pretty good mover. And this offensive scheme that they're going to put in this year with the ZBS, he's a good fit for it. So I think it's a good move bringing Wylie back. again, you have so many holes on this roster. Offensive line isn't one of them unless you make it one of them. And so, you know what this also does quietly is this also lessens the need to re-sign Chris Paul. Like Rico said something to me or to all of us on the Commanders King stream that I really didn't consider until he said it, which is this isn't a great free agency offensive line market. Like I don't know if you guys have looked. Clearly, the Commanders Kings hadn't really paid attention to it because I brought up a couple of names and they were like, who? Yosh Nijman. And then, we went off on a side mission with Yosh Nijman. It was hilarious. But I talked about Yosh Nijman. I talked about Spencer Burford of the 49ers. Yosh Nijman is with the Panthers this year. And I talked about Yosh Nijman a couple of years ago when he was a free agent the first time. And like that's like there's not really a ton of good offense. Like there's a couple that are going to get paid really good money. And then after that is just a bunch of guys that, are backups that can start for you, but it's not ideal. Chris Paul could be seen as a starter elsewhere and his money might get a little bit higher. Rico's like, I don't know, some teams might throw some money at him. And I'm like, didn't really consider that. Like, it's Chris Paul, right? That's what I'm saying to myself. It's Chris Paul, bruh. Who's throwing money at Chris Paul? But what do I always tell you about free agency? I always tell you guys, somebody is always eyeballing your stuff. You take it for granted. Somebody else is looking at your stuff out of the side of their eye. They try not to let you know that they're looking, but they are absolutely checking out your product. So while you're thinking, ain't nobody paying De'Ami Brown, the Jaguars are like, bullshit. Let me get him for 10 mil. We like 10 million? Hey, De'Ami, bro, it's been real, man. Hope it works out for you in Jayville, bro. Duval, go get your bread. Right? It's always somebody eyeballing your stuff. And all it takes is one team to be like, Chris Paul, we think he can start. And them throw out a number that the Commanders are like, no way. Brandon Coleman, you up, bro. Now, all of a sudden, if Coleman can't get it done, he can't stay healthy in camp because he hasn't been able to do it the first 2 years of his career. And while he has to step in, you feel comfortable with that happening. If Chris Paul isn't here, again, I assume, and they can nip all of this in the bud, all this Chris Paul conversation. If they really truly want him back, they can negotiate with him so that nobody else can. They can take care of him right now. They don't have to wait. But we'll see how it all goes. But this Wylie move, it's great just from a depth perspective because, again, I personally love them bringing back Wylie. I don't think you do anything, right, with Nick Allegretti. I think you leave him alone. He's got one more year on his deal. I've heard people throwing out the idea of cutting him to save, $4 million or whatever. Hell no. Keep your little $4 million, right? Like, let Nick Allegretti earn his money. He's a really good backup here because he's the guy that's going to keep us away from having to bring back or having a guy around at the center position. You know who I'm talking about. Thanks for making me right, Jaden. I don't like Nick Allegretti keeps that kind of guy away from me, right? So I think Allegretti's still here. Wylie's still here. Coleman, you bring back Chris Paul. You got all the depth you need. You add in one or two more, parts here or there. I still think you can add another young offensive tackle that you groom to be your new swing tackle. Eventually, you're going to need that. But I think this allows you to have the flexibility to not necessarily have to do anything in free agency along the offensive line. I think this is a good move to bring back Andrew Wylie. So I do feel like this was a good move. It doesn't cost you a lot, right? And you keep the continuity up front in the event that something goes awry with one of your guards or even a tackle. you keep the continuity of the offensive line pretty much intact with the guy that they're comfortable with in Andrew Wylie. So I think this is a good move on the part of the Commanders, and they shouldn't be done. They should not be done. There should be more moves made to secure the services of other pending Commander free agents as we head into free agency. Before you know it, it'll be here. This is the last week of February. March 3rd is the last day to slap the franchise tag on any player in the league, or any of those tags, the transition tag, franchise tag, etc. That's next week. The week after that is the tampering period on March 9th. And March 11th is free agency and the start of the new league year, and all hell breaks loose at that point. We're 2 weeks away from all of that. So, again, this will be here before you know it. Before you know it. We are officially 2 weeks away from the tampering period on March 9th. And on Wednesday, we will be 2 weeks away from the start of the new league year, which means free agency officially begins. Guys can sign, put ink to paper, right? So that's why I would like them to get as many of these guys that they want back here done, so that you don't have to see what their value is on the market. You set the number. If it's a good enough number, they'll take it. If you let them get out there and they get more than, then you might lose them. And you got to be okay with that. You got to be comfortable. That's what happened with Jeremy Chin last year. They wanted Jeremy Chin back. He felt slighted by the number, right? Well, he felt slighted by the fact that they didn't offer him anything. But their thought process was, you go out there, you see what you can get, and then you come back to us and you give us a chance to match. He was so pissed off that they didn't offer him before free agency. He just took the first deal that he got from the Raiders. He might have been able to get more if they didn't pay him a ton in Vegas. So take care of your guys if you can, but we'll see what they ultimately decide to do. Either way, Andrew Wylie back in the fold. I do like it. So let's get a word from one of our sponsors, come back on the other side, and then we will get to the comment section, if any exists. Sleeper is the best way to experience and connect over sports together. It's a one-stop shop for all of your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat in the games in real time with other users, get the fastest scores, blazing fast news and alerts right at your fingertips. Play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. So enjoy sports the way they were meant to, together. Download the #1 sports app today. Predict the hottest football stats like passing yards, receiving yards, touchdowns, interceptions, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy football skills. Use promo code LTN and Sleeper will match your first deposit up to $100. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states. Check out Sleeper today. Sleeper. All right, so big shout out to Sleeper for sponsoring this stream. If you aren't a member of the Sleeper family, now is as good a time as any, with college basketball kicking into high gear. March Madness right around the corner. We got all those tournaments coming up here. I think in about a week's time, you're going to start seeing all of these tournaments on the women's side, on the men's side. Sleeper's got you covered for men's college basketball. They got you covered for the NBA. All-Star weekend is behind us in the rearview mirror. So, now you're going to get these teams pushing towards trying to make the postseason. All of that is available here on the app. Also, they have a new feature now with team picks. So we've always had the opportunity to make player picks, which is my favorite thing to do on the app. But now they have an option where you can make team selections and pick teams to win games. It's a neat feature that they've added to the app. So if you haven't already done so, check that out. Sleeper is absolutely killing it. I want you to go out and use my promo code LTN to get you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. That's right. First deposit up to $100. They're going to match it with 100%. So look, it's a great deal, and you can do a lot of damage on this app. They're putting out boosts on a daily that give you a chance to take your money and make it, put these tickets together and boost the potential earnings of those tickets. Man, I'm hurting. I had one the other day, sidebar, 2 points away from 1,300. You want to talk about somebody hurt? One bucket from 1,300 because they put out 100% NBA boost, and that was this close. So big shout out to Sleeper. Use my promo code LTN, link in the description of this video. Let's get to the comment section, see what you guys have to say. If you guys got not too much, we'll get out of here. You're probably tired of seeing me. You've seen me twice today. You're going to see me a bunch this week. So Corin Smith, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Corin writes, sup, Lou? Sup, Corin? Can we keep Debo 2 years, 30 million? What's left? I mean, I wouldn't be upset at that number. 15 million is below the number that I set for Debo. I said anything that'll get him over $50 million on a 3-year deal, I'm not okay with. So that meant basically $16.5 million I was cool with, right? Anything north of that would push a 3-year deal, which he's not going to get a 3-year deal, but it would push a 3-year deal above 50 million, and I'm not okay with that for Debo. I think the price for him is right in that $15 million range. He probably believes he's worth more than that, and he played well last year when he was healthy, so I can't tell him he's not worth it. I just wouldn't be willing to pay that type of money, and I don't think the Commanders and Adam Peters are willing to pay that kind of money either. But $15 million, I think they'd be very interested in bringing Debo back for that number. I don't think Debo's interested in taking that number, however. So, again, with the cap going up, there's money to be made, and Debo's probably going to look and say, I can get more than $15 million per year on the market. And he's probably right. He's probably right. So my guess is you can't keep him with a 2-year, $30 million deal. Unless, of course, that deal was fully guaranteed, which we're not doing. He's not getting $30 million guaranteed, on a 2-year deal. It's not happening. Now, a 3-year deal that he would sign, 3 years, 45 million, 30 million guaranteed. That's the Javon Kinlaw deal we just did. Yeah, he could get that deal. He could absolutely get that deal because he wouldn't see the 3rd year of that deal more likely than not. But I just don't see him back in Washington. That's the brutal, honest truth is I don't think he's going to be back in Washington. And I've really been on that mindset this entire time. Like, Debo was always a rental. Early in the season, I started to waffle. Like, man, he's been really good. But the goal was always to see if you could extract a Super Bowl on this 1-year window with him and see if he could be the piece that was missing to put you over the top. We never got to see it because of the Terry situation and, all the injuries. But that was always the goal, I feel like. You give up a 5th-round pick to see if Debo could be the guy that pushed you over the top. That was worth the 5th-round pick, personally. It didn't work. I mean, it wasn't because of him. It just didn't work because of all of the injuries and the situation. You just move on from it, right? Wipe the slate clean. You got to get younger at the receiver position. That's how I feel. Ultimately, when it's all said and done, you got to get younger at the position, man. Can't keep trotting older guys out there. Terry, we got our one older guy in Terry McLaurin, and I think he's going to age gracefully. Debo's game, to me, doesn't age gracefully. His game is so much so predicated on physicality, run after catch. He was never that fast to begin with. He's only getting slower as he gets older. And there's only so many blows that your body can take with the physical approach he has. Now, I thought he was fantastic on kickoff returns. He can still do that at a very high level, but I don't think he's going to be here this upcoming season. So I think we've seen the last of Debo Samuel in a Commander's uniform, but I could be wrong. we'll see. But I think it's all predicated on how much he thinks he's worth. If that number exceeds what the Commanders are willing to pay, we've already seen Adam Peters isn't willing to budge. He sets a number, and if you cross that number, then he crosses you off the list. So I think Debo is going to exceed that number, personally. But in any event, that's the loan super chat. So we'll get out of here. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. We got a ton to talk about. I know we got an Adam Peters press conference tomorrow. There may be a Dan Quinn press conference tomorrow. It could be Wednesday. Either way, whatever the situation is, you'll hear from me based off of the Adam Peters press conference and possibly a Dan Quinn press conference. Then we'll have our defensive free agency video also tomorrow. So jam-packed day tomorrow, I would assume. And we'll see if we get both coaches tomorrow. I may just focus on them and then bump the defensive preview to Wednesday, and then let that be that. And then Thursday, combine, Friday, combine, Saturday, combine, Sunday, combine. So, we got plenty of content to carry us through. So, we'll see how all of this shapes up. But you'll definitely see me every day this week, basically. So, this is about the offseason's getting ready to take off. Like, the combine is the offseason being sent into hyperdrive. So buckle up. Here we go. We talked about Adam Peters. This damn Alec Pierce, man. He's kicking my ass right now. Adam Peters and how aggressive he had to be this offseason and how this was a big offseason for him and Dan Quinn. Quinn has already gotten active, done some things we didn't think he was going to do. Adam Peters now has to hold up his end of the bargain. We'll see what he is able to do this offseason. It starts this week, basically. And Andrew Wylie getting a 2-year deal. I think they're off to a good start there. We'll see what they continue to do as this whole process starts to really kick into high gear. So in any event, that's going to do it for me. Your man, Louie T, here on the Command Post Live. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. Until then, I'm your man, Louie T, signing off. Take care. Peace.